Hey guys, what's up? It is week 444. Let's just dive right into the reviews. And the first one up is from Deaf Crocodile, and this is Bill Plympton's Mutant Aliens from 2000. Bill Plympton is an animator, director, of course. He directed the movie that Deaf Crocodile put out as well. I Married a Strange Person. Excellent, sexual, crazy, funny, a lot of sexual jokes and innuendo and puns and visual puns and things like that. Very clever, wacky animated film. And Mutant Aliens is kind of more of the same. I don't know which one I prefer. I thought this one was really great. This has more of a sci-fi bend, which definitely, so does the other one, but this one has more of a sci-fi kind of bend. The title Mutant Aliens is kind of a lie, but it's kind of a brilliant kind of reasoning and everything like that. So what we have here is Bill Plympton said that he wanted to make something more focused on aliens and animals and do crazy designs and things like that. And he at first veered away from that because he thought it'd be like childish and he didn't want to make kids movies or anything of that nature. But so he ended up coming up with creating all these different animals and mutants and things like that, and spent hours writing and drawing all these different concepts. And eventually this is kind of what came out of it. So the story that inspired him was reading about the poor Russian space dog that was left in space. So that's kind of where we're at here. We have this famous astronaut, very big piece of, the American culture. Everybody loves this astronaut, and he gets launched out into space, and this kind of evil guy who runs this, space company ends up fucking him on purpose, so it kind of looks like, they just are underfunded, so he can get kind of a American patriotism behind him and get money and get funded and all that kind of stuff like that. This guy's daughter is obviously heartbroken. She's a little girl at the time, and this scumbag kind of goes back and becomes this giant, even bigger billionaire company guy and all that kind of stuff like that. Lo and behold, what happens is this astronaut, 20 years floating in space, manages to crash land back on Earth alive, but he doesn't come alone, and there's a little bit of deceitfulness, but the true story is unveiled maybe a couple times. One story is, and then we have a true story, and what it is these mutant kind of animals from space, which are brilliant. They have all these different designs, kind of a mixture of animals. There's like an alligator, a little cute one that's kind of in the style of like a Pikachu kind of deal, caterpillar, a pig, and a frog. It's kind of weird, the fact that like they're super adorable but also dangerous, which is definitely something that I love. I love monsters, and when I saw this ragtag group of creatures, there's also like a flying fishman thing, but this ragtag group of creatures, I thought was brilliant. Also, it's kind of got this idea that it does have this anti-patriotic kind of feel, and I thought it interesting in the original commentary in 2000, Bill Plympton said that a lot of people would give him slack for that, and he said, if I can't live in a country where I can ridicule the government just to make jokes about all this kind of stuff, I've always felt that way. That's generally my consensus. If I appreciate being able to say jokes about government officials without immediately being killed. It's kind of like, and I thought that was kind of a very much a thinking person's way in the early 2000s, I would say. But the visual puns are I don't think they're quite as elaborate, but I think this one's just as funny. I do find this one a little bit more endearing, if that makes any sense. And as kind of, I don't want to, what am I saying, like crash at times it can be. I don't even know if I'm saying crash is the right term, but sexual and kind of perverse and almost just kind of perverted in a lot of aspects. At the end of the day, and in his special features, he says he likes happy endings and he likes to have somewhat of a wholesome feel. And it's definitely a marriage of kind of wholesome, weird, perverse ideas and stuff like that, with like good-natured, I guess you'd say good-natured perversity, if that makes any sense to anybody. But I love this. I thought the animation was great, very much in the same vein as I Married a Strange Person, with that kind of evil corporate villain at the head of everything like that. But the animals steal the show. They do a lot of parodies, and Bill Plympton's not afraid to say what they're from. This is kind of in the vein of Reservoir Dogs, here and there, all that kind of stuff like that. Highly recommended. Looks fantastic too. So here's what we have as features: 2 classic Plympton shorts. Hot Dog, which the Hot Dog was also in I Married a Strange Person. There was one of his shorts as well. This dog's adorable. It's hilarious. This dog always trying to help people, but things backfire. 6 minutes, 2008. And The Cow Who Wanted to Be a Hamburger, 2010, 6 minutes. This is just kind of a weird take about, what do cows do all day? That's kind of where his starting point was. New video interview with Bill Plympton, The Making of Mutant Aliens, moderated by Des Bartok of Deaf Crocodile. It's pretty lengthy, interesting, good stuff. Puts his ear up to the camera at one point, kind of fun. A new commentary track by animation producer and podcaster Adam Ratkoff and podcaster film critic James Hancock and longtime Plympton collaborator John Halderid of Plympton Studios. They talk about kind of voicing over and how he made the movie and things like that, and why this was in there, kind of speculation. And the old commentary is on here too, but I don't see it listed, but there is the original ported over commentary from the initial DVD release with Bill Plympton himself. But highly recommended. Great little weird alien movie. It could also be used as like a movie if people are going to get high and zone out and just completely trippy in that aspect. But I love the mixture of the kind of genres where it's like it's sweet, but it's also violent at times, but also heartwarming and endearing. I don't know. I kind of like these kind of warped kind of feelings being in the movie, as long as they somehow make a cohesive picture, and Bill Plympton somehow gets that tone right. Okay, we have another one from Deaf Crocodile here, and this is Inflatable Sex Doll of the Wastelands. And this is an odd film. Now, at first, you know, from the title and suggestion, and I'd only heard of this film in passing. It's by the writer of Branded to Kill, which is a very popular Japanese kind of pinky crime style thing. And also the movie Dogra Magra, which Radiance Films put out, which is an excellent surreal horror film, is what I'd say. Late 80s film. It's the last film he wrote. So this is kind of where I was familiar with the writer, not the director himself. But so you kind of get the idea that this is going to be your standard kind of pink film or something along those lines, maybe really highly sexualized. And as it starts, I'm like, this is just something a little bit different. I like to go in blind as much as I can. And this is, I was like, oh, is it kind of your standard kind of crime film? Which, you know, there was a lot of those, like Seijun Suzuki did, I believe he does want to do Brandon Girl, but he did a lot of crime films in the 60s and 50s and stuff like that, and all sorts of different films. So I really was kind of trying to find my footing in the pacing of this film. And basically what happens, it's a warped kind of plot here, and it's kind of explained why it is very surreal and maybe not told in chronological order with flashbacks and all sorts of crazy things going on. Beautiful black and white movie, lots of cool locations, deserts used and stuff like that, which probably mean more than what they do just on a visually, you know, like on surface level. But we have this kind of business guy whose girlfriend was kidnapped by these, I guess, a Yakuza kind of gang, and they forced her into prostitution and porn films and things of that nature, and he wants to hire a hitman who demonstrates his skill by shooting down a little tiny tree with double pistols here. So he's kind of supposed to infiltrate, or not infiltrate, but track these guys down and kill them. That's kind of what he's doing, and looking for this this woman, and we kind of see glimpses of, you know, this weird kind of going into bars, and he's always constantly looking for this one guy that's possibly behind it, that is kind of like an arch nemesis, but seemingly, and it gets really odd, and the longer it goes on, the more surreal it gets, and for the first act, maybe, or first two acts, I was trying to watch this movie as a coherent kind of straightforward movie, and I was just like, I am getting lost in this thing. And by the end of it, I was like, oh, we're off the rails completely. This is something else completely different, not expected, you know. Maybe I wouldn't even say it's in the world of something like Taro Ishii. It's just not anything quite like I've seen. It feels like film noir pinky, if that makes sense, and a surrealism. So I've seen movies that have similar stuff, but the mixture of things are quite a little bit different here. And one thing that really helped me kind of grasp what the hell I was watching, and kind of was like, this will be better on a repeat viewing, is the commentary by Arnie Venom and Mike Leader, who I'm used to kind of doing a lot of the Kung Fu movies. In fact, they do almost all the Shaw Brothers stuff, or Kung Fu or Golden Harvest movies, and I've kind of grown to enjoy them in terms of like experts in the martial arts world and Kung Fu and all that kind of stuff in wuxia films. So I was popping it in, I was like, what's the commentary? Oh, it's Arnie Venom and Mike Leader on a Japanese kind of film, which was unique, and they did pretty well. And this is they do point out things like this in other commentaries, but Artie Venom had this big theory about what the film's about and why this, and kind of dissecting it, I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense than just looking at this as a straightforward film. And not that I don't look at movies like that at times, but sometimes when you have these expectations, you completely screw yourself up looking for something that's not there. And we have a new video interview with Professor Alexander Zoltan on the pink film subgenre in Japanese cinema. And through all the information here, I always get them mixed up. They're like, there's pink films, there's pinky violence films, there's Akatsu erotic films, and like the pink films I think originally have to be, of course, shot on film, but they have to be outside studio things of that nature, not made for the big studio. The big studios like Nakatsu started catching on in the 70s, early 70s, and they were like, we're gonna go bankrupt unless we kind of switch gears here and start producing these kind of Roman porno films and stuff like that. So they kind of go into that as well. The new video essay journalist and physical media expert Ryan Burrell, the disconnected and film professor Dr. Will Dotson, that if I remember correctly is a pretty interesting one, kind of talking about the movie and how different it is with the video essay. And this one kind of left me a little like blank too, because the movie was confusing to me, but overall a nice release, and it's a good looking movie, and they talk about the original titles and break down what all that kind of stuff means. And boy, man, if you don't have much context on this movie, I would suggest, going in completely open to something incredibly bizarre, but incredible. Inflatable sex doll of the Wastelands, 1967, so early for this kind of thing. Now I know that what was the director? I'm trying to think of him. Watakatsu. I know Koji Wakasatsu. I can't think of his name, but he did stuff like Violated Angels, and so I mean he was making stuff probably roughly around this time as well. And you have like, I know my friend Tyler is a big fan of stuff like Woman in the Dunes, which would be mid 60s for Japanese stuff as well. And then we have the ghost stories for that. But this is odd. This is a little bit different. Not quite like anything I've seen from this time period from Japan. All right, we're going to dive into the last disc here of the Furious Swords and Fantastic Warriors. This is the last disc of the Fantastic Warriors segment here, and this is a trilogy of swordsmanship here. This is a rare anthology, non-horror anthology from Shaw here. Shaw now did have like Haunted Tales and a couple other ones, and some of their films feel like they are vignettes or in partially chapters or along that lines and stuff like that. So this is Trilogy of Swordsmanship, co-directed. Cheng did not direct all of this one. Yeah, we have 3 stories in here, and the first one kind of opens up with this this family that's our martial artists. It's like a old woman, her daughter, who's like marriage age, and a young boy. And the father had passed away, and he had put a bow up there, and he's basically give the old, what is the sword in the stone story, right? If anybody can take this bow and draw it and shoot their target, then they can marry my daughter. And she's a very, pretty woman, a very, desired woman. So this kind of rich guy shows up, and he's kind of just an overall piece of shit, my money, blah blah blah. And so what happens is he tries to string the bow, he can't do it. Meanwhile, some other gentleman is there who's very respectable kind of guy, and they end up getting into it and have this elaborate battle. And this guy the rich guy still wants her to marry him. They refuse, and it ends up being this big bloodbath and kind of leaves you on a cliffhanger where you kind of want to see what's happening here. The next story follows that of courtesan falling in love with a general. It's forbidden according to this guy, and he wants to sentence them all to death. And she kind of makes an idiot of him and promises to bring a criminal in Lowley to justice if he gives her a chance and all that kind of stuff like that. So that's kind of this story here. Nice little clever, a lot of big scene in the room, like out in the open in the courtroom, I guess the open court where everybody's supposed to be executed, and everybody says I visited a courtesan and comes clean and all that kind of stuff. And the final story has probably I don't know if it's the best cast, but it has a bunch of people in it. It has David Chang and Tai Lung and Bolo Young. Bolo Young is in one of the other ones as well. It's kind of like this big strong guy fighter villain, but this one is pretty crazy. So David Chang, this company breaks loose Tai Lung. He's supposed to be sentenced to death, and David Chang kind of interferes, and he doesn't know what's going on. And then he kind of they become friends, and he gets kind of taken and prisoner. So they decide to break him out, and that's kind of the biggest one here. They have this elaborate, amazing, giant battle at the very end, which is probably one of the better Shaw Brother fight scenes I've seen in a while. Although they have a lot of great ones, but this one is violent. And there's tons of characters, and Tai Lung looks great in it. He's also really solid, and of course it ends in tragedy. So it's got the 3 stories in here, and I want to make sure I get the right commentaries. I think it's Artie Venema and Mike Leader on this one as well. And they definitely talk about the commentary, this is definitely in here. And they talk about the anthologies from Shaw Brothers and some of the ones that they like, some horror anthologies they mention, all that nature. And they do mention that this final story does feel like maybe it was an uncompleted film and they didn't want to waste the great fight scene. And I could definitely see that kind of stuff happening here. And I felt that way a lot about like Haunted Tales. I was watching that for 1980. I was like, man, this feels like it's just like an uncompleted movie and Shaw's not going to throw it away. So yeah, I thought the Trilogy of Swordsmanship was decent, and I thought the last story was great. All stories are interesting though. Good stuff. Okay, the last movie in this set is the new Shaolin Boxers, not to be confused with the Shaolin series that Shaw Brothers had put out. This one stars Fu Shang, one of Cheh's favorite actors to use, and Fu Shang has become one of my favorite Shaw Brother actors here. And this one, he is a martial artist that has too good of a heart to continue being a martial artist. So it's very aggravating in this one because he is the only guy who sticks up for people that are in need or in trouble. So right in the beginning of the film, there's a woman who's being attacked by kind of a thief, a bandit. He drives like a rickshaw kind of style thing. It's not actually a carriage, if you will. I call it a rickshaw. It's a carriage. But so he gets out and he beats the crap out of this guy. But he shows mercy, and this guy ends up stabbing him. So he gets an injury, and his kung fu his master basically tells him, "Listen, man, you're too good. You're too nice for this. We don't want you martial artist. You're going to get hurt, and it's going to look bad on the school and whatnot." So he kind of boots him out, and this obviously upsets him. And by kind of stopping that that fight, that robbery, he's made some enemies with the kind of big bad in town, who is this real evil henchman that knows like this evil real boss that knows all these special martial arts techniques and whatnot. So of course, his kung fu master has shunned him. He's gotten his employers in trouble. They've been disturbed for just kind of not necessarily sticking his nose in other people's business. He just wants to help people, and he ends up fighting a lot of people and causing a lot of problems here, and nobody else stands up for him. Nobody really looks out for him, and they all look at him as kind of a screw up, except his uncle, does show pity on him, and they do seem to like him. But at the very end of the film, of course, his old kung fu master realizes that he's put himself in tremendous danger, and that if he doesn't teach him how to fight, it could end in tragedy. So he sends him away in your typical, Shaw Brothers fashion to learn a new martial arts to defend himself, which none of the other bad guys are going to be as good at, and he kind of whoops some ass. There is, some real weird kind of like rape stuff in here, which isn't typical for the non-horror Shaw Brothers or exploitation ones. I wouldn't call this an exploitation or a horror. It does happen quite a bit in their exploitation and horror films, but yeah, this one, one of the supposedly good boys of the town who used to run with the gang kind of sells his girlfriend into really nasty kind of like prostitution and everything like that against the old gang, and this kind of puts Fu Shang into a rage, and this is kind of leading up to the climax. I won't spoil absolutely everything in here, but it ends in some nice freeze frames and everything like that, and they do point out very much in kind of the style of Peckinpah, which I absolutely adore, and I think Frank Jin and Michael Worth are the ones who did the commentary on this one. Again, another great duo who know a lot. I love the duos on here. I've really grown accustomed to hearing Frank Jin, Michael Worth, or Artie Venema, Mike Leader commentary on these ones. And they also are very familiar with Hong Kong as a country, so they have a lot of cultural aspects about them and things of that nature, which help with the commentary indeed. So I actually prefer, I think, the new Shaolin Boxers over the Trilogy of the Swordsmanship. I don't know why I'm comparing each movie paired up with that, but overall, really good set, I would say. Good set, all directed by Chang Cheh to some extent, and the films in here, let's go over them one last time. If they have them listed on the back, would be great. King Eagle, The Trail of the Broken Blade, The Wandering Swordsman. Then we have Men from Monastery and the Shaolin Martial Arts are both in new Shaolin Boxers, Iron Bodyguard. And then we have The Fantastic Magic Baby and The Weird Man, which are completely bizarre films, and the Trilogy of Swordsmanship, and of course, I already mentioned the new Shaolin Boxers, but The Weird Man was a real surprise for me from 1983. I would recommend that. Just a weird, crazy movie that kind of leaned more into horror and fantasy for me, so I enjoyed that. I enjoyed most of them in the set, though. The only problem with watching a lot of these is that they do bleed together. I think that, I think The Weird Man is one that I probably won't forget just because it's such a weird standout, as well as The Fantastic Magic Baby. Those are just weird movies in general. Okay, we're going to cover the films of Hisayasu Sato Volume 1 from Vinegar Syndrome New Pink line here. I love the Japanese Pink films, a lot of them, and I like the Nakatsu erotic films. I just love Japanese films in general, and I tend to really like Japanese films from the mid and late 80s and early 90s, especially some of the stuff that would go direct to video, although these Pink films are gorgeously shot on 35mm, and Hisayasu Sato was a director that I've been a fan of for a few years, maybe longer, probably probably 5 to 6 years or something along those lines. And his films were really hard to see. I had Naked Blood on DVD. It was the first one I saw years ago before I even knew his name, because it had such a cult. It had that, oh, this is a really crazy film, and stuff like I had the Love Minus Zero Equal Infinity, box set from Arts Magic, the 3 Sato films in there, before I knew Sato's name. I would just collect these kind of oddball titles. And then when I did 1991, I kind of put it all together who Sato was, and I said, oh, and I started watching, when I did 2291 for 22 Shots and Moods at Horror, the top 10, I watched a lot of these Japanese films, and I started watching the Sato films, and I said, this guy is really spectacular. So I started hunting down his films and watching as many as I could, and put ones I had already seen together. So when I was hoping that someone would put these films out, and being remastered, it was really kind of an amazing experience to see these kind of movies that I saw in, in box screen, in square screen, square 4x3. And glorious widescreen, remastered in film. And Sato's films kind of have they're pinky films, so they have a sexual fetishism about them. A lot of them are dark and weird and have murder and violence as well. But they also have a kind of look at technology, and it's strange, I think I could tell a Sato film, like an auteur kind of thing. Even though he's working in this environment where he has to follow these certain amount of rules, his films still stand out enough to where I could be like, this is a Sato. And I find that as a compliment. This was the first time I've seen real interviews with him. I know Arrow put out Rampo Noir, which he had directed one of the segments in Anthology in 2005, and his segment on there, which I think is what's the guy? Taro Ishii based like half his career off this guy's work. I can't think of the Japanese famous horror writers like their Edgar Allan Poe. I think he adapted one of his stories in there. They might all be. They're all Rampo Noir. They're all Rampo stories. I think his name's Rampo. No, I'm an idiot. But yeah, so seeing like Sato's films here cleaned up, it was a great trilogy of films to put together for the first set, and there's going to be more. So let's dive into the first one here, Rewind, aka Celluloid Tears, which is also the name for Muzani, and that's kind of, I guess, where the trouble happened with the original cover art or something like that. They put Muzani clips on there, which supposedly was going to get a release as well, which is an infamous Japanese film. But Rewind, Celluloid Tears, I saw this for the first time a while back, so rewatching it, I was like, oh yes, I remember really liking this one, kind of in the line with his film Lolita, Vibrator Torture. I kind of put those in the same kind of category, but this one is it's a thing about a lot of Japanese films, even their low budget ones or their kind of fetishy or subgenre or niche stuff, they all kind of have a mystery to them, and I realize I really kind of like a mystery when I'm watching a movie here. So in the very beginning, I think it's the very beginning, we see this kind of like the camcorder kind of footage where they're kind of panning over, and it looks really kind of just point of view, very personal. We go over this fence, this gate, and we see like this fridge open, and there's a hand holding a tape, and you're like, oh, that's so twisted. And so what's on the tape is apparently possibly a snuff film in an aspect, and we kind of follow our characters here. We follow this young man who works kind of in this video shop. A lot of porno films are there. There's another girl that works there as well, and she supposedly was in a popular film, but she always denies it. And what we have here is a crime hunter who, I don't know if her niche job, she does like this news station or something along the lines, is she's a crime hunter, and she's kind of to figure out where these tapes are coming from and all that kind of stuff like that. So she gets invested in this, and she starts to hang around with the young man who seemingly having an affair, or not affair, but having a relationship with his sister, if you think. But at the same time, there's some background kind of characters, including that woman that also works at this shop, who are kind of making films for the underground video world. This is all going to tie together, and there's going to be a mystery element to it, and people are going to end up dead. It's very much in the aspect of a peeping Tom, because the camera is the weapon. Of course, the blade pops out. I think in peeping Tom, it sticks out at the end of the tripod. And also kind of in the vein of an 8mm, right, where we're kind of searching in this underground porn world to figure out a murderer or something along the lines. But this is, of course, before 8mm and after peeping Tom, 28 years after peeping Tom, and probably 20 years before 8mm. When was 8mm? 98, like 10 years before 8mm. So it's got all these kind of little, like, nice little mixtures and things like that. I love his camera work. I love that he shoots in the city. I love that it just feels very, sensual in weird ways. And of course, it's a pinky film, so there's going to be these longer sex scenes and everything of this nature. But I love the obsession that young people get in their films, and they become like dangerously obsessed with things. And I can relate to that, being someone that can tend to get obsessed with things. So I think that's why probably the characters kind of somewhat speak to me. Not like I'm saying I'm like a crazy killer or something. I could be, who knows. But I'm just saying, like, I the obsession and the weird intrigue into the darkness and stuff like that. I like this, and I really like Celluloid Tear. I was very happy with it. I can't remember who did the commentary on this one. I listened to all the commentaries happily. Their commentaries, professional commentaries on Sato films was just like a dream come true. But the commentary on this one is that's on Lustmord's. We do have a commentary. Where is it at? Rewind commentary track with film critic Simon Abrams. It's a good commentary track. Simon Abrams, the name's familiar, but he's the one I'm probably least familiar with. And also on the bonus disc here, not bonus disc, but second disc. The first disc we have the features, the 3 features with commentaries. The second disc we have interviews with Sato and other people. But Sato does talk about the film too, pretty candidly, and he has the original shooting scripts too, and they actually have like the title on there. So people are like, "Why is this one called this? Why is this one called this?" Well, Lustmord should be called this, and the Japanese title, but the shooting scripts tend to say the actual names Lustmord and in Rewind and Love Letters in the Sand. So there's that. I would highly recommend Celluloid Tears. I think it's a very good starting point for a Sato fan. If you're a gorehound, go with Lustmord or Naked Blood or something along those lines. But if you're into the kind of weird, like gross sexual stuff and like obsession and underground video world, go with Celluloid Tears or maybe something like Lolita Vibrator Torture. But so cool to see Rewind Celluloid Tears on there. Loved it. Loved seeing it on Blu-ray too. Great stuff. Looks good. Okay, moving to the second part of the Sato set here, we have Lustmord, aka Pleasure Kill. Again, 88. And this one was actually the film made before Naked Blood, Splatter Naked Blood, which it's technically just Naked Blood, but people call it Splatter because the release and stuff like that. But so Pleasure Kill or Lustmord was actually made before, and it's kind of very similar story. If not, he remade his own movie, really, 96 from 88, so 8 years later. We have this woman who's just basically doing a trial test with tranquilizers on 3 young women that live in Japan, of course, and her son is interested in the study, of course. Her husband and his dad kind of ruined himself. He was a scientist, and he kind of flaked out. I don't remember exactly what happened to him, but he's out of the picture, possibly dead. I think he's dead, and kind of dishonored himself with his weird experiments and things like that. The son obviously has a little bit of that in him. He wants to sit in on the experiments, but the mom says, no, you can't do that. So he sneaks in and he spikes the tranquilizer they're getting, and his obsession is to basically make pain a pleasure. So you can see where this is going to lead. So these 3 girls all have their own different kind of personalities. One is kind of obsessed with like food, one is very vain, and one is obsessed with video games. That's different in Naked Blood, but similar. And so what happens is he's obviously watching these women from a distance and seeing what's happening to them among that part. And it gets really nasty for a couple of them, really brutally nasty, especially the food one. I won't go into it, but masturbation with violence is just not something very pleasant. In Naked Blood, it goes even further with that to a certain extent, but some of the other scenes were pretty graphic in this too that were different. And then this starts a relationship, maybe obsession with this woman, and it ends tragically for pretty much all the characters involved, but they definitely say some weird idea of being put into that video game, being obsessed with that video game, and somehow kind of like bringing it, and the ending is really haunting. I love that. But there is a couple scenes in here, of course, that involve incest, which are disturbing, and when somebody's having sex, there's a murder during it. Not as graphic as something like Necromantic 2, but still pretty twisted to be that idea, right? And the final death in the film is really haunting. Really haunting. It involves a strangulation, and the visual on that of the person laying back like that and the blood flying on their open eyes like that. I just thought, geez, you don't see that imagery in other films. You don't see that kind of imagery, that haunting, disturbing imagery like that. The point is, I'm a sick individual in the fact that if I watch a film and I see something I haven't seen visually or something along those lines, I think, oh my God, like I'm excited because I'm like intrigued and appalled at the same time. That's kind of like that, that I don't know how to explain it, you know what I mean? And it's just being honest, most people, I don't know if they would be honest with that. I'm sure they would be. And that's not like, oh yeah, that's great. I'm just like, oh wow, that's really quite striking in a horrible way, and I'm just intrigued to see it. But visually, again, very good film, shot in a lot of the same ways that, same areas. He has a lot of rooftop shots. I don't know if these two have them. I'm sure they do, but I remember watching like a dozen of these. I was like, every movie is like somebody who's on a roof. roof. Everybody's on the fucking roof. And I made the jokes about that. And then when they have the special features, literally one of the features is Sato just walking around like the streets filming, like, here's where we hung somebody, and here's where we went on the roof, and here's where we stood there. And I'm like, oh shit, man. It's just like so, much of an auteur in a weird way, and I'm not sure, like, I know a lot of the other Pink films probably have a lot of the similar stuff like that, but, Pleasure Kill was the first time watching for me, and I had seen Naked Blood, so maybe I was like, I don't need to see the one that's very similar. I would have watched it eventually, and I had, was hoping that these would get released so I could see them in pristine quality, but this one's great. Really love this one. Just up there with Celluloid Nightmares and Louis Vibrator Torture for me, as some of my favorites. And I'm hoping, and I'm probably pretty sure, I know Love Minus Zero Equal Infinity is coming out, which is a great one, awesome one. And another one coming out, but I'm hoping that we get some of his gay-oriented Pinkies, which, like 100 Sense of Touch and is it Fetishes or Fetish? Those movies are pretty wild and crazy as well, and I think they're really great. So this one is really good as well. Very highly recommended, Lustmord. The final film in the Sato set is Love Letters in the Sand. This one is 1987, or am I mixing? One of these is 87, and two of them are 88, if I'm not mistaken, or one's 89. But Love Letters in the Sand was one I didn't know too much about. Again, we have a mystery here, a kind of classic tale here, right? We open up with a classic tale here. We open up with a rape scene, which is pretty brutal, in kind of a copy shop, and like the characters are kind of like, you see who they are, but things are just a little different. You never really know exactly who they're going to be later and things like that. And then we cut to this man who's been attacked with a metal baseball bat in a rainy day, red umbrella, boom, hit in the back of the head, and he's in the hospital. His memory's gone, and the doctor's telling him, you're having this weird kind of thing where I have to give you this medicine, or you're gonna eventually, start turning into a woman. You're whatnot. It's this weird kind of thing like that, and you're like, what the fuck is he talking about? The nurse is also involved, and the nurse starts to get really intrigued by this guy, and they start this kind of strange relationship. And you realize this nurse is not really on the level either. She's kind of incredibly bizarre. And they start painting these characters around the hospital, like another nurse and other people around, and the doctor, as possible people that are carrying out these baseball attacks, these metal baseball attacks around the kind of city when it's raining and whatnot. So you really don't know who it is. You have that mystery angle here, and you have the guy who has amnesia trying to figure out who he is. And at the same time, we have this nurse who goes home, and she has this fish tank sitting there, and she's kind of pushing her face against this sand that she has there. And you're like wondering where it all connects and where it all goes to. There is a rape scene that's filmed in here, and I only bring it up because, obviously there's a lot of sexual nature and stuff like this, but I'm only bringing up the rape scene here because I've never seen one quite done like this. It's an attack on the beach, and right when, the actual, like, assault is definitely, like, taking place at its most, I guess you'd say, disturbing point, the camera kind of is, like, handheld and everything, and it pulls away, and you see it, like, at a distance, you know what I mean? Like, it's like a haunting imagery, or something along those lines. Like, I'm trying to think, like, sometimes when you see, like, horrible stuff in the background, just, like, glimpses of it, and you're moving, it's somehow more disturbing to me, like, you actually are putting yourself in the place there, like, it's going to be an image that is ingrained in your brain, like it's a snapshot of hell or something that you can't get out of your head. And I like when they do that. They kind of pull away, and you see that on the beach, just the struggle in the water and everything like that. And I was like, oh, that's just really kind of haunting. Again, his movies are haunting, is a way to say. Sensual and haunting in the weirdest kind of ways. And I'm not saying the rape scene is sensual, but the other sexual scenes can be the other sex scenes can be sensual at times, and disturbing and fetishy and weird. Like, it's a strange mixture of things and obsession. So, like, Sato is the #1 director for the pervert card, if you believe it or not. I would say that get your pervert cards out ready for the Sato set, and you'll be happy. But there's other things. Like I said, like, I don't want to compare this, but there is, like, scenes in films that are just, like, where the camera's moving, and, like, you don't see everything, but you get a glimpse of it, and it's enough to be even worse. Like, Come and See, there's so much stuff in that movie where, like, they're pulling away, where the kid knows that if he turns around, he's going to see the most awful shit, and the camera's moving, and you're following him and stuff. Like, so, like, that is really effective, and I don't want to compare it directly, but it gave me that same kind of vibe. But Love Letters in the Sand is my least favorite of 3, which means nothing. I still really enjoyed it, and there's a nice mystery angle to it, and it's warped and bizarre as well, and it definitely feels a little bit like a Dario Argento character motivation in here. If you're looking at something like The Bird with the Crystal Plumage, who is, I committed these acts of violence because possibly some violent act was done on me, and I am now a damaged person. That's definitely a theme. Violence breeds violence, right? And that's in here. I should mention, the commentary for the last one was, I messed up. The commentary for Pleasure Kill or aka Lustmord. I think it was Jasper Sharp did the commentary, who does tons and tons and tons of commentaries for Japanese films. He's an expert and highly intelligent guy. And the commentary for Love Letters in the Sand is Sam Deegan. So 3 great commentaries, a lot of information. All 3 of them do mention other Sato films, because I think it's probably impossible not to mention the other Sato films, you know what I mean? Because they have so many similarities with each other, and a lot of the same actors, a lot of the same people, a lot of the same themes, which I love seeing. You know, it's a director who has all these themes, and there's always like scientific experiments and stuff like that. I think I remember Turtle Vision or Lesbian Honey Love whatever from '91. Both of those, one of those definitely had like these scientific elements of experimentation and things of that nature. But great set. Let me go over the rest of the features before we move on past Sato, and I'll definitely cover part 2 and part 3 and part 4 and part 100 if they release them. But I know Sato has up to 60 films out and everything like that. So what we have here, like I said, the commentaries on all 3 films, and then we have Kill Kill, an interview with Hisayasu Sato, Written in Blood interview with Taketoshi Watari, and then that is for Lustmord, and then Visual Pleasure, an interview with Hisayasu. All 3 of the films have an interview with Sato, and then we have Caught in the Act, an interview with Kiyomi Ito, and interview with writer Yumino Shiro, and then we also have something that's really fun here. Pretty in Pink, an interview with critic Rasuko Kidushi, and Walking in Circles location feature with director Hisayasu Sato, covering all 3 films. So, and one is 87, and then we have 88 and 88. 58, 64, and 61 minutes. Short run times, straight to the point, packed with tons of weird, ideas and themes and thought-provoking imagery, and it's all in under an hour or so. So you can't beat that. Great set, great release from Vinegar Syndrome. My favorite of the year, I would say, for sure. My favorite release of the year is probably this Sato set. So go get it. You'll love it if you're a pervert like me. Okay, now it's time for a 2025 movie here, and this is Scott Derrickson's Black Phone 2. Now, I have a really weird relationship with Scott Derrickson movies. I'm not, like, I always feel like I'm being preached to. Like, they're very much like, I really got that vibe from Exorcism Emily Rose. Like, that religious kind of propaganda stuff. And I would see it in things like, Sinister here and there, maybe, and even, what was the other one? The Black Phone 1. But overall, I don't hate Sinister, and I think it has some really incredible spooky imagery and scary imagery, and I think that's what we have here in Black Phone 2. And I walked away thinking, man, Black Phone 1 was a pretty good movie, by far my favorite Scott Derrickson movie, and maybe that's the the Joe Hill of it all, very much like a Stephen King, being the son of Stephen King. But Black Phone 2, so when I was watching the trailers and everything screamed at me, this is a Nightmare on Elm Street, and people are like, who wants to see a rip-off of Nightmare on Elm Street? So you know what, I'll take it. If we're not going to get a new one, and people are like, well, we can't, I don't care, make 30 of them. If they suck, I just won't watch them. That's what I'm saying. I don't find things like that sacred. I just want, it doesn't really matter at the end of the day. You just don't have to watch it, right? So I was like, oh, cool. I like the idea of kind of making the grabber like a Freddy Krueger style character that invades your dreams and gets real surreal and weird with it. So the first thing, I started Black Phone 2, and I was like, visually, this is great. I love the visual. I love I love the aesthetic, especially when we kind of go into the nightmares. I don't know if it's actual film, but it had like a film grain quality to it that I thought worked. I love the location of the kind of like the climate. It's in winter, it's cold, it looks freezing, and some genuinely nasty imagery, some violent imagery. For a movie where not that many people die, I don't want to spoil every goddamn thing about it, but there is some really incredible, nasty, violent imagery. And the problem with this is what we have is a sequel here that's trying to carry on a story. I don't think it was written past this, the book and everything like that. Correct me if I'm wrong. I have not read the original book. Or maybe it was just a script written by Joe Hill. I'm not 100% sure either. But do your research, Dave. But so I know that it's going to get a little clunky, especially when you want to add even more mythology, and you already have the weird kind of supernatural element with the kids calling on the phone in the first film, so it adds this weird kind of missing kids kind of period piece, so it's like, it's going to be a little rough to kind of grasp this, and I know it is a little clunky, and at times it does even get a little preachy about the anti-alcohol, anti-marijuana kind of sentiment in there, pro-Christian thing, but at the same time, the movie is really effective for me in the emotional caliber, and I didn't expect it. And I know, sometimes a lot of the emotional stuff I'll just come across as cheesy and doesn't work. This did come across as cheesy at points, but for some reason, it ended up getting me. And I caught myself being emotionally invested in Black Phone 2, the brother-sister relationship and the relationship they have with their mother, of course, in that. But the plot basically follows is the grabber comes back. He somehow still has power over the kids. He's haunting them, scaring them. And they're getting kind of images, and they piece together that they need to go to this old kind of, camp counselor Christian town, like a little place where they kind of be a counselor in training to kind of figure out what the hell's going on. It ties into their mother, which I think is cheesy to tie it all in together, but it's okay because I understand what they're trying to do. And sometimes, it's a little clunky, but they need to be a little clunky to get there. Maybe is how I'm seeing it. So what happens is they realize that the grabber still has power, similar to Freddy Krueger, because he's still, these kids have not been found. Some of the kids have been killed and not found, so he has like the souls and whatnot and that kind of deal. But there's obviously a shout out to curtains in here, the imagery, but it's a lot like Nightmare on Elm Street, a lot of the waking up and the weird dreams and imagery and the kind of being in two different worlds at one time, the dream world and the real world. And it fits in lines maybe with the Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 2 kind of rules and whatnot. I think the acting's fairly decent. I think the characters sometimes are one-dimensional. Not all of them, but some of them do seem like they're kind of like, hey, I'm this guy, and I'm going to have this line, and that whatnot. But they even have the Christian character who's like an asshole Christian, you know what I mean? Like, you have the very Stephen King style thing here, right? Well, he's like, Stephen King's a religious guy. He's a God-fearing guy and whatnot, and he has like a good-natured heart or whatever when it comes to Christianity, but not. But then he's always going to have that like overly religious asshole character in there too, to show like the bad side of the religious stuff and whatnot, and always have them be like an asshole and get they're just desserts or just get like put back in their place. So that's always in there too. And so this does feel like a marriage of Scott Derrickson and Stephen King, but it's not Stephen King. Joe Hill wrote the original and he has the Stephen King flair, so it does feel a little bit like that, a Nightmare on Grabber Street, a Nightmare on Christian Horror Street, or something along those lines. But I do appreciate that they're willing to get incredibly weird with it and show incredibly violent imagery, good music, and you know what, as cheesy as some of it is, I fell for the emotional core. I was completely invested, and I don't know what, and stuff like Bring Her Back, which is a better movie, I would say, probably, I guess, on technically script level, and things like that, and transitions, it just wasn't as effective for me because I didn't get invested in the characters. And something like 28 years later, I keep comparing it. It does have an emotional core. I just feel that happened too fast and was too forced to have any effect on me. While this one is cheesy, and maybe I'm just getting a little soft in the head and soft on the heart, I actually really enjoyed Black Phone 2, and I know it has warts and all, and I would watch this again, and it just had a certain flavor about it that worked for me. And Jeremy Davies is in here, who's an actor I infamously always hated because he did such a good job at Saving Private Ryan as Upham. And he was just such a fucking wimp in that movie. But you can't hate the guy for doing a good job, but when you're 12 years old, you don't care. And I held a grudge against Jeremy Davies for years. But he does fine in this one. But yeah. So I would recommend it. I know it's not getting good reviews, but if you're like, go in and just say, I want to watch a cheesy kind of Christian Nightmare on Elm Street with really good imagery and some violent stuff. And, it does involve dead kids, so it has that, right? So it feels more in line with like Freddy Krueger actually killing kids, in that aspect. But yeah, I enjoy it for the most part, even if there's things that I don't like about it. I have to realize that you just got to let yourself enjoy something every once in a while, and I enjoyed Black Phone 2.
I have returned.
Okay. Show me.
Where is the music now? The sound of laughter. There was never laughter.
What's it like?
What's what like?
Screwing a psycho.
gone.
Guy blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there.
Eat shit and die, Ricky!
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet.
31. 32. 32. Year of a man's prime. Loved by many women. He might still learn to swim. 32. Going. Gone.
The kid was cut in half, Arnie. They had to scrape his legs up with a shovel.
Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do with shit? Scrape it up with a little shovel.
One final moment of revenge.
Wondering what's real. All of it is real.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
Really?
Yeah.
Get the video, Joe! Long live the new flesh!
No choice but to kill the son of a bitch.
Living one's entire life in a state of fear. It is all I have ever known. Fear.
Are you ready?
Okay, go ahead. What are you doing?
All right, let's get into those 1983 movies. The first one up here is Surf 2. That's right. Now, I know you're saying, Dave, Surf 2 ain't a horror movie. It's got zombies in it. It's a cult movie. Do I have my old VHS sitting here? If I see it, I'll grab it. I know I used to have Surf 2. Here it is. Surf 2, the VHS. This is, Interglobal Home Video. The end of the trilogy, Surf 2. Absolutely ridiculously stupid movie. But when they announced they were releasing this on Blu-ray, I was pretty excited that Vinegar Syndrome was doing it. They have the director's cut and the original theatrical 2-disc set here. 4 fucking commentaries on it. Those are 4 commentaries to Surf 2 in like an hour and, like a 65-minute making of, which I absolutely love too. But, yeah, so this stars a bunch of cool people that you recognize, including Eddie Deason, the king nerd of the 80s films. He's in a bunch of stuff. And he plays this kind of nerdy guy that's getting revenge on all the surfers, including Eric Stoltz, by going through their fathers, who are just these Biff Maynard from Zone Troopers and Trancers, and having them sell this Buzz Cola, which is basically this weird combination of like nasty motor oil that turns all the kids into zombies, including, surfer Tom Villard from Popcorn and a bunch of other people in here. There's so many people in here. The guy from Superstition, and he plays Big Head. He's kind of like the kind of big goofy kind of party animal in here. Jim Greenleaf is in here from Tag the Assassination Game and Joysticks in a smaller role. So there's just tons of people. Cleavon Little. I just don't want to forget anybody, but I'm sure I'm forgetting tons of them. It's got an amazing soundtrack all the way up to the starts with the Beach Boys. Has Rheingold in there from actual music from Der Fan, which I absolutely loved hearing because that's an amazingly underrated soundtrack, and Rheingold is great. But yeah, so I watched the director's cut this time around, and it was kind of this time I liked it even more, and I just had seen the theatrical, of course, but I was like, oh man, it just played together. And seeing the year 1983, I was like, I would have swore that Surf 2 was made in 1986. Post this, and the first thing I said, man, this feels a lot like Class of Nukem High and Toxic Avenger. And in the commentary said as well too, the same thing. I was like, it really feels like that, that kind of pollution, weird kind of quirkiness of parody and puns and just gross humor and things of that nature. And I was just like, it really feels like it. And Toxic Avenger came out the year after, and I don't know if they saw this. I have no idea, but maybe that was just kind of in the air, that kind of weird idea, that cult film idea. And I think that Surf 2 is actually totally amazing, being like a parody and satire of the beach kind of movies, but also being just wacky and zany enough to stand on its own. And there's just lots of great gags. If one gag doesn't work for you, there'll be another one. I should mention Teddy Kaiser's in here without his mustache. But yeah, so it all kind of boils up to like a surfing competition at the very end, and of course the evil surf zombies, not surf Nazis, trauma, but the surf, zombies are going to try to win the competition, and the Buzz Cola is being passed around, and people are getting constantly turned into it, and we have hijinks on the beach, including plenty of TNA, and fat naked guys running around, showing their assholes on accident, just ridiculously gross, stupid, weird shit, probably pretty on PC here, but it also has this like charming charming, lighthearted, dumb quality about it that I absolutely love. There is one of the grossest eating competitions ever against, the guy who plays Big Head, who's one of my favorite characters in the movie, and Tom Villard, who's an underrated actor who's in 1982's Parasite, but he's more importantly in 1991's Popcorn, where he plays a great character in there. And unfortunately, Tom Villard would die of AIDS not too far after Popcorn, early 90s. So what? But he's great in this, and you really get to see him shine in the director's cut. There's more footage of him, just full of energy, completely goes for it. So I would really recommend checking out Surf 2 if you're into the weird, zany, wacky movies. It's a cult movie through and through, and now it's not zombies and a violent, idea like that. And this is the only film the director ever made. He was predominantly a writer, and he said he wrote this in kind of like a drug stupor, like after he had an injury or something along the lines, just sitting there writing this crazy ass movie. Which is funny because the writer, I think, director or filmmaker of Revenge of the Radioactive Reporter said the same thing, and I feel like those two movies, Surf 2 and Revenge of the Radioactive Reporter, they share kind of the same kind of DNA. Most of these movies that have this vibe came out in the late 80s. If this came out in 83, you know what I mean? It's really early for this stuff. I would guess like, it came out in the late 80s and whatnot. But no, Surf 2 was way ahead of its game, way ahead of its time. I think it's really funny, and if you like this kind of silly, goofy shit, I think you will absolutely love it. Eddie Deason's great in it. Eric Stoltz is one of the surfers, so he's really good in it. Everybody's solid in it. There's two dads and there's a brilliant scene where they're both in the house, and you think it's a split screen, and they're talking to their wives, and they're talking the same exact lines. There's definitely a mixture of kind of like whimsical behavior in the movie where it's like, it's improv, let's just do this, let's just do that, and you can tell everybody on this set was having an absolute fucking blast, and it's contagious. And people, I don't know, when people are like, if it was hard to make, the movie will be great. If it's easy to make, the movie will suck. And it's like, I don't know about that shit. That's just some random ass fucking thing that people say. I have no idea. I wasn't on the set. But regardless, it's an absolutely fun, crazy, zany movie. The hour of making of has a lot of the people that worked on the film, of course. The lady from Fade to Black is in here from 1980, the Australian lady. She also plays kind of a fun little character in this one, reserved character, one that is kind of like used as a pawn by Eddie Deason. Eddie Deason's really funny in here, completely over the top. Like I said, everybody, and there's 4 commentaries, 2 for the director's cut, 2 for theatrical cut. Eddie Deason does one on the director's cut, which is nice to hear. Talks about all the actors that he worked with, and he seems to have a generally good idea of this. And you know what? He actually is like, this held up a lot better. Maybe he was thinking the theatrical cut. Then we have the director's cut with the director, and I can't remember if it's Zach Carlson or someone else kind of doing that. And then the theatrical cut, we have I should just look. Why am I torturing myself trying to remember every goddamn detail? Okay, so the stupidest movie ever made, Drinking the Drink of Surf 2, that is the and then an extended making of Dr. Med, that's what that is. Okay, we have a bunch of people involved with here, boom, 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 and actors, writers, casting directors, all that kind of stuff like that. Commentary track with director Randall Badat, director's cut, commentary track with Randall Badat, theatrical cut, commentary track with Eddie Deason, director's cut, commentary track with historians Zach Carlson and Brian Colony, theatrical cut, behind the scenes, original scissor reel, booklet featuring writings by Mike McPadden, who did that Teen Punks thing, right? Book, Zach Carlson and Joe Bob Briggs. So I would highly recommend this movie. It's a great movie. It's a lot of fun. 2 different versions on here, both looking spectacular in Blu-ray. Surf 2, great 83 weird entity that I think is horror enough to talk about. All right, the next 1983 one is from legendary director Fred Olen Ray, and that is Scalps. That's right. The commentary actually helped me understand why this movie is the way it is, right? I had never seen Scalps. I had heard about it for years. I don't know if I ever had the all Continental video with that and Slayer on there. I love the Slayer from 82. But Scalps, yeah, that's right. So this is a Native American Southwestern kind of slasher deal, not to be confused with Ghost Dance from the year previous. The better film, actually. The bigger budgeted movie, too. But so Fred Olen Ray was, a low-budget, do-it-yourself kind of director, and I wrongfully said that his first movie was Alien Dead 1980. When I did my 1980 video, it actually was Brain Leeches from 78, which I've not seen yet. I will see that eventually. But Fred Olen Ray, started his career in the late 70s and worked all the way. He's still working today. He does a lot of Christmas movies, for the Hallmark Channel, but he did a lot of horror films as well early in his career and whatnot. But he's encyclopedia of film knowledge as well. So Scalps, what we have here is we kind of have an opening idea. This guy gets killed, but then there's like 50 minutes of nothing, and we have this old kind of professor, and he's like, we're going out to this old burial ground, and he's warned not to dig anything up, but he did already, and he says to the kids, basically don't dig anything up. They're going out there. Well, he's told not to, but he tells them basically to it. The kids go out there on their own, and they dig up something. One of them is possessed by this ancient Native American and starts killing the people. It takes about 50 minutes. It's called Scalps. There is one brutal scalp in here. The almost all the versions that, the VHS was non-censored, one of them or something like that. They had to cobble this together from the original negative and then add in all the clips or something along the lines of the gore scenes. So they're like in standard def, try to look as good as they possibly could, or otherwise they'd be cut to ribbons. But yeah, some of the gore effects are pretty effective. There's a rape scene in here, and Fred Olen Ray talks about that, and he says, this is not something I normally would do. They asked me to put this in here, and I just don't like doing this kind of stuff. And I was thinking about, I was like, yeah, I've never seen that in any of his movies, so it definitely did feel a little out of place. Felt like something out of the 70s or even early 80s where it's at. But some of the kills are pretty decent. The characters are pretty, they're slasher characters. The acting is not amazing, but it's not the absolute worst. There's a cameo by Forey Ackerman, who is a cameo in a million movies from the 80s. He's in Aftermath, right? And he's in Return of the Living Dead Part 2. He's in a million cameos. Famous Monsters, of course. Famous, writer and stuff like that. Big horror contributor, big horror lover, million movies, cameos. But the acting's not great. The special effects are decent. And, the killer in Native American looks all right. Fred Olen Ray talks about, like, them cutting this movie and messing it up and fucking up day for night shots and all that kind of stuff like that. And I'm like, this makes a lot of sense because, Alien Dead is sloppy, but not sloppy in this aspect, you know what I mean? And as it went on, like, he made some movies in the 90s that I've watched and stuff, and he's a much better director, obviously. This is a very low-budget film. But overall, how could I not watch Scalps from 1983? This is the retro media release. I think there was an 88 overseas as well, but this does have the commentary with Fred Olen Ray, which I recommend you guys listen to. And remembering Scalps 22-minute featurette with some of the actors and Chris Olen Ray, Fred Olen Ray, Frank McDonald, and Richard Hench. Yeah, and that's about it. And we also have Scalps 2, The Return of DJ, fan film. That's right. But not amazing, but not as bad as maybe some people made it out to be. But I like my slasher movies. Scalps is okay. Not the best 1983 movie, but I didn't expect it to be. Okay, the next one from 1983 is Legend of the Cat Monster by Obayashi. And it's strange, Obayashi did stuff like Houseu, His Motorbike, Her Island, all these kind of like fantastical, amazing, bigger movies. So that's where I knew him from, Houseu and stuff like that, and some of his other, The Drifting Classroom, things of that nature, School and the Crosshairs from 81. And he's a really great director, and all his movies have this fantastical element to them. So he did Cute Devil in 1982, which is a TV movie, kind of supernatural remake of Bad Seed, which is a great film, actually. And then he did another TV one from the same network this year, Legend of the Cat Monster. And, the first 30 minutes had me intrigued, but then the second 30 minutes, I was like, this is really slow paced, and it's really kind of morose and moody and kind of depressing to watch, although I was enjoying it and intrigued. I just felt like not much was happening until that last 30 minutes happened, and I said, oh boy, this really got Obayashi, this really got strange, this really got kind of amazing. And what they're saying in here is kind of a really nice little kind of a nostalgia piece towards classic cinema making in Japan and cinema making in general. So basically, there's an actress that had disappeared after a certain time. She didn't finish this movie. She went to isolation on this island, and supposedly she hasn't aged a day. That's what everyone says. She's living there with a famous director who also stopped making films right at that time and moved there with her. And what happens is there's this young writer, and these producers are like, well, we want to get her back, kind of finish this film. We want you to go there and write a scene for her and everything like that and try to course her back into making films. And throughout the movie, there's like this kind of like Western kind of style music playing through here, and there's a lot of characters that are hanging about, including one guy. It seems like a private eye, but he's also a former director that's also obsessed with this actress that wants to get out to that island as well. And they're all kind of weird, kind of strange characters that are living in the past that have this love and nostalgia for film and the way films were made in the back in the day. And it all pops up, and they're talking about how directors used to be so well respected, but now they're just nobodies, and no one cares about any of the filmmaking. It's all died and everything like that. And there's a lot of comparisons to films being dreams, to this living this dream and all these dreams and things like that. So eventually he does go out there, and it's kind of a character within her. You kind of get the idea that as long as she's living in this dream of this film, and this film is playing, it's her dream, and she can be who she once was. But once that dream dies, she dies, everything dies. And that's kind of what you get that idea about, but it's a little bit more nuanced and maybe possibly more complex than that. But the imagery that happens in the last 30 minutes is absolutely wild, where some character, I don't even want to spoil it, but I want to sell this movie, so I kind of have to, where I've never seen anything quite like it, where a character is actually turned into a film projector. I don't know how to fucking explain that, but it's brilliant for the death of a former director to die that way. But the last 30 minutes has this classic, you'd think, Obayashi kind of imagery, not as big as something like Hausu, but interesting enough to be like, man, I can't believe this is a TV movie with so much cool shit. Same with Cute Devil. But it's not as good as Cute Devil. I think Cute Devil, tonally, I mean, like, pacing-wise, is a better paced movie, but I think the last 30 minutes of this one, what they're saying and how they're saying it about the dreams and this never aging and living in cinema forever kind of deal, I think is interesting. I think it's a great kind of nostalgic kind of piece. There's good actors in here that pop up throughout, and that young actor kind of being fed off, kind of that reoccurrence of, possibly being someone from the past or looking like someone from the past, very similar to like a vampire story or something along those lines. But or a character gets his eyes set on somebody that looks like a lost love. But it has all those kind of elements here. It's beautiful. I notice a lot that Obayashi never tends to shoot his movies like inland, right? Everything either has to be, the big city, they'll have city stuff, but it's mostly in the country, and there's always like a coastline. Japan has a lot of coastline though, but I'm just saying he has a lot of water in his films. He has a kind of a thing with a lot of the ocean in his movies and a lot of coastlines. I think his motorbike, Her Island, has a lot of, driving and there's city driving in that, but there's a lot of ocean and country and things like that. Well, that one has the economy going back and forth between the city and the country. But overall, I think that he definitely has an obsession with it, kind of like Hausu is going to isolated country location, and Cute Devil was isolated kind of country location. This one as well, that kind of isolated island location. But overall, I thought Legend of the Cat Monster was interesting, good stuff, and I love this TV programming. I wonder if they have any other movies, the Tuesday night kind of spooky movies or whatever they call it. I bet there's a handful. I'd be interested in checking them out. I don't know if Aoyashi did any more of these. I doubt it. But the two that he did do are interesting enough, and it'd be nice to see a remastered set of these or something along those lines. That's just a pipe dream, I imagine. But interesting movie from 1983 nonetheless. All right, the Patreon pick is a wild one. This is 1987 Stanley Kubrick's movie, Full Metal Jacket. And of course, I've seen Full Metal Jacket a handful of times, and I've always enjoyed it, right? I mean, Full Metal Jacket is one of the quintessential Vietnam movies. You got Platoon, you got Apocalypse Now, you got Full Metal Jacket. Those are the big three, right? People argue, well, I prefer Apocalypse Now, yada, yada. As a kid, I would say Platoon. Platoon was one that I think was the most accessible. It didn't, you know what I mean? As a young person, it has all the big cast and all the actors and all the characters and things like that, and the big emotional moment and everything like that with Willem Dafoe and whatnot. And I still love all three. Apocalypse Now is one that I'm least familiar with. I've seen it, but I still love Platoon. But watching it this time around, just I guess maybe looking at it a certain way, I was just like, man, Full Metal Jacket is a fucking masterpiece. And as the older you get, like, I guess I just I'm more. I don't want to say I understand it, but I just feel like Kubrick's films are all great. And this is going to be weird here, right? This is based off a book, which most of his movies are. In like reading and hearing commentaries, basically the idea that they just want to show you a look at how war can change somebody. And that's basically, he doesn't tell you how to feel, but people are going to walk away feeling their own things about certain characters like Private Pile or Private Joker and whatnot and everything like that. So the first half of this movie is boot camp. The second half, the longer half, is of course the Vietnam War. Matthew Modine plays Private Joker, who ends up being like a journalist in here. Fantastic performance. Arlie Ermey plays the drill sergeant in the career-making performance, which is one of the hands-down best performances ever. And Vincent D'Onofrio, and I think his on-screen film debut, plays Private Pile, who is a troubled private who just can't cut it. And this is an amazing performance by him too. D'Onofrio is fucking hinged in this, unnerved, unhinged, and so of course they go in and the drill sergeant attacks. Arliss Howard also in here. Great performance by Arliss Howard. I will be spoiling this, but if you haven't seen it, I recommend you check it out. No, so it's like I'm saying, all these characters and whatnot, but just going through them, I just want to go back to Kubrick for a second. His films, like, you see a lot of directors, and I'm not trying to be a dick or anything like that. Like Martin Scorsese, a lot of his films feel the same, although he did, like, Hugo and the documentaries. So his films branch out a little bit, but you think the gangster films, right? But then again, he's more versatile than you would think. But Spielberg, I'm trying to think who would people consider the greatest director, Spielberg or Kubrick, right? Or personal taste. I'm trying to avoid the personal taste, just the main status or whatever people would say. And I'm like, a lot of Spielberg's films feel like Spielberg, right? They all feel kind of that vein, that same. And Kubrick's have like a certain look to them and style, but none of them are in the same genres at all. None of them. Like The Killing, to Doctor Strangelove, to Clockwork Orange, to The Shining, to Spartacus, to this. None of them are alike. 2001. They're all these weird genres where they just don't really fit anywhere, which is brilliant in a lot of ways, right? I mean, they don't fit together. They have like underlying all these kind of things that cross over, but it's just, to a man to do that many different genres and do it successfully is brilliant. So the first half they're going through this whole like boot camp thing, and yeah, will laugh and just be horrified by R. Lee Ermey kind of drilling into these guys, improving, and then them making him do the lines and things like that. But that scene in the bathroom, the way it's filmed and the sound design actually got to me this time. Watching it as just like maybe trying to look at it a little bit more, being older and understanding a little bit more. That's a disturbing ass scene. So twisted, and you're like, I feel bad for Pyle, I feel bad for Joker, I feel bad for this entire situation. And there's a point in this where I kind of understand it, where Lee Ermey, I was gonna say Gunnery Sergeant Lee Ermey basically says, there's nothing I can do for you now. You guys are going to be punished for every time he messes up, because he's like, I can't do it, you guys have to punish this guy. I can no longer help this guy. And it's a cruel thing to do, but at the same time, you're like, what else is he going to do? He's beat the shit out of me. And like, it just doesn't, it's just like this fucked up moment in there when I didn't register how fucked up it was. But that scene is just one of those, will live in your brain forever scenes, right? Where, what happens with Private Pyle, Full Metal Jacket. It's just a scene that stuck with me when I first saw it, but didn't understand the heaviness and importance of that scene and everything like that. In the second half, we go to Vietnam, and the way that Matthew Modine's character, I mean, listen to the commentary, D'Onofrio was saying things like, no one else could have played that role correctly, right? That weird kind of duality of man that he mentions in the script. He says, well, why'd he got born to kill, and the peace sign on there that when he gets grilled by that general or colonel, and he says the duality of man. He's like, what are you talking about? Like that idea. And then those ideas and themes are so like beyond war, right? Beyond the idea that a soldier would have to think. But it seems like in Vietnam, a lot of soldiers were thinking that kind of stuff, questioning why they were there, what they were doing, and all that kind of stuff like that, according to the films and what people say. But you think Vietnam, you think jungles, right? You're like, Charlie was close. It was, you think jungle, you think sweat. But this is the one time where you see like the kind of the city, like torn, bombed out building where they're going through. And it's super iconic. And it's really only a couple scenes. Like, the movie doesn't have that many different scenes, right? These kind of long scenes. Of course, you have the briefing room with the guy from, I believe that's the guy from The Resurrected, and great friend Hawk the Hawk the Slayer, if I'm not mistaken. And I didn't even remember he was in this. And so you have that scene, of course, with the sniper. Is the big other scene in here, which is an amazingly haunting scene with, we have Adam Baldwin in the movie, and Arliss Howard comes back. And that scene, too, where Arliss Howard dies, is just incredibly impactful. The way his confusion and his anger to confusion to like fear, just a brilliant acting performance. And all the characters are established pretty well, and you seem to kind of get a grasp of who they are at a certain extent even before they die. Even Edo Ross has a little small role in here, which kind of blew me away. I forgot he was in here, and you kind of know who Edo Ross is before he dies, and just a great face, a great character actor. The way it's filmed, the way it feels kind of natural, but also not, I don't want to say it doesn't feel real. I don't know how to explain it, but it's just strange. The movie just works so well in terms of the acting and the directing, and the awkwardness of the dialogue seems to give it a power of realism, which shouldn't. You know what I mean? A lot of other lines and stuff like that, it almost feels like news footage when they're answering the questions, because it's just like too clunky to be real. I meant too clunky to be fake. Does that make any sense? And I just talk about clunkiness being bad, but that's in like script form. But like, just when you ask like 20-year-old kids who just watch their friends get killed and stuff, what they're doing there and all that kind of stuff like that. But just the action's shot really well too. Overall, a great film, and just a lot of stuff that you don't typically see in Vietnam movies. Not overly dramatic. He has that cold kind of clinical thing that people say, but for some reason that's even more effective in certain aspects to touch me emotionally. I don't have the 4K of this. I know I have a DVD somewhere, which I know, I'm surprised I didn't have the Blu-ray. I go around and look, and it's one of those movies that you think you'd have, but I don't. I probably was waiting to get the 4K, and I didn't buy it yet. Maybe Black Friday. Excellent movie. Held up really well, but that's newsflash. Full Metal Jacket is one of the greatest movies ever made. It was so much better than I remembered, and so many quotable lines and so many good performances too, that smaller performances that are great too. The guy in the helicopter, he says, "Ain't war hell?" That whole speech, that is just completely insane guy here, just completely fucked up, but loved it. I'm glad somebody picked it for a Patreon pick, because who knows if I would ever got to it. There's so many great movies that I've seen, or so many great movies that I haven't seen, that I don't get a chance to talk about because there's so many new releases, so many other horror films, all that kind of stuff that I'm doing on here. But great movie. I loved it. Good stuff. All right, let's get into these questions, comments, and concerns. Nick from Flanders, The Mask. How I loved watching this on VHS again and again, much to my mother's error. She felt Jim Carrey's was too crazy. She felt Jim Carrey's was too crazy, sets one's teeth on edge. At times, he truly does. Sets one on edge. Still glad that Arrow is unleashing it upon us yet again in 4K, no less. Let's all dance for Cuban Pete. Yeah. Hope you had a joyous All Hallows Eve and that those crazy kids didn't pee on your lawn. I don't get any kids here. Love the strength tank top. Sexy but suave. Okay, thank you. Questions. If you found the mask, would you be tempted to put it on, or what would the mask Dave be like? I have no idea. Wouldn't want to find out. Probably wouldn't put it on. Why do you think the storytellers keep going back to World War II and Nazi atrocities? Do you feel it offensive? I don't, but I'm old. I don't find it offensive. I mean, those movies are old. The World War II is almost 100 years old. It's 80 years old. We've been telling World War II stories forever. The Nazi exploitation movies. I mean, they're too damn stupid to find offensive. I just don't find films offensive. I don't. Maybe it's just something wrong in my head. I just don't get offended by movies. I know people, I could see what somebody could find offensive, and I've been like, oh, that's fucked up, that's twisted. But I tend to search out those weird movies because I'm just a weird person. Do you enjoy the current Italian film industry such as it is, or are you sticking with the classics, Mrparka? I haven't watched it. I watched a couple Italian movies. I think I watched one last year that was decent. I don't even remember its name. But you know what? It's not really my thing. I just don't watch them. I don't. There's been one every year that's been decent, but they don't stick out in my memory. It's not something I revisit. I like the classic Italian horror films from a certain period, or classic Italian films, period. Till next week, God willing, take care. Thank you. Explosive Action. Glad you enjoyed the Teddy Page Phantom Soldiers, one of his best. Check out my documentary, Philippine Soldiers, the action films of Teddy Page, to see trailers and my thoughts on all of them. Awesome. I'll have to check that out. Explosive Action, great guy. Check out his channel. What the Flick. I love Nazi exploitation. It's just such a weird genre of movie, and they're all so trashy. Also, one of my biggest regrets is not waiting in George Romero's line at Motor City Nightmares. Back then, I wasn't too huge on meeting celebrities, and his line was long. But it was only about 1 year later that he died. That's so sad. Man, he was cool. I mean, I was actually starstruck. I usually don't, I guess. I didn't meet that many. There was a time when I did, when there was like relatively no lines, and it was like more personal, and I didn't feel like I was paying $100 to say, I like your movie. And I just felt like, you know, and then you get to a certain point where you're paying so much, you're like, I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. That's what I feel like this is. But you know, like Romero, I just was like, I don't know, it's been a great inspiration to me. And I was like, I'm probably sure you hear this all the time, but you've been a great inspiration to me. And he's like, you can never hear that too much. Just joking around. He's a nice guy. I mean, I don't know him, but I loved meeting that little small moment. I had to. Way up, dude, gives thumbs up. Thank you, Ilk Vomit. That's ILM with the effects on the mask, Dave. I know, like, it's so, like, I just want to, so many little acronyms, and I'm like, what is it? What is it? Beyond Sour's Ground, I might have to pick up the SS Experiment Love Cramp release. I'm struggling with $35 price point for that title, but it's one of the only video nasties I don't have on any format. You'll have to remind me. Is this one of the one with the exquisite piece of dialogue? What have you done with my balls? I believe it is. Also on topic of video nasties, I agree. Unhinged is very underrated and one I would love to see fully restored. It's too bad in retrospect. I would have been happy to help do a deep dive discussion on that one, and it is obscure enough to likely be the first time watch for many of your viewers. Yeah. I didn't know. I mean, like, if you guys want, just shout out at me. If you know somebody or you got a group of people that want to do something, I may be open to it. Anyways, I was curious, do you typically do anything special for Halloween as an adult? I try to do Halloween movie marathons if I can. This year I did a Living Dead triple with Night, Dawn, and Day, back to back. I've always watched them separately in the past, but they played better together better than I had anticipated. Then after taking a break to eat, I'll watch Trick or Treat 86 or Return of the Living Dead to wind down. Wouldn't it be killer if the actual Peter Bark had a YouTube channel and he was one of your viewers? LOL. He wouldn't dare. I'm just kidding. But not typically, you know. I've been doing this tradition the last couple of years because we don't get any kids. We're right on the main road. We've tried to pass out candy for a few years, and not one kid. Full size candy bars waiting, not one kid. So it's like 5 years and not one kid. I was like, fuck it, I'm not staying here. So we would go to my cousin's in Wyandotte, Michigan. He gets tons of kids, and the last couple of years we dressed up and scared him and everything. He always dresses as a werewolf, and I've been dressing as a corn man. It's fun. Pass out candy and whatnot, and his kid helps us scare the kids, even though he's a little kid. He loves doing it too. So yeah, it's a little fun little tradition there. But no update this time around, so let's get out of here. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching, and have a good one.